Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Saturday morning of championship. Oh, wait, sorry, had a flashback there. Good evening, everyone. Welcome into the program Tigers Tonight. I'm your host, John Maddox, joined by one half of the best co-host in all the land, Brian Moss. Larry will be along shortly. He is experiencing a lovely time dealing with our air travel system currently. Brian, how are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. Just living large up here. I had to change my background because this is how I'm going to look at everyone who thought I was crazy for saying Memphis would would beat Tulane. So I'm going to look down on all you peasants. I didn't have enough time to actually get my crown and have a robe. I had to work. I'm sorry, but this is the best I could do under the circumstances. So
Say the
how you
crown and
doing?
robe.
How you doing?
The crown is in the shop, and the robe is
That's
in the
it.
wash.
That's it.
Well, to be fair, you are correct. You did predict a Memphis win. But remember, was it 3 weeks ago when we made those crazy bold predictions and I said we would lose one of the last two and beat Tulane? Well, I got it half right. So, but no, I
There you go.
didn't. Memphis would do
See,
what
you're
they
you're
did.
you're on this side. That's you over
That's
here.
right. I get to look down at the rest of the peasantry and take half credit for your work. So, this is our regular season finale. Of course, Memphis ended the regular season with a final count of 10-2. And then this evening, for the first time since 2019, Memphis is in the college football playoff rankings, coming in at number 25. And Brian, that just makes you, I think I said this on Twitter, just absolutely kicking yourself. Two, you're basically four plays. You're a pick six, two
Yeah.
stupid first down or fourth down attempts, especially the play calls, and a pick six from not only playing for a chance to be in the college football playoff on Saturday, but having the potential to get that first round bye as well. But that honor will go to Boise State and or UNLV, and that's a phrase I'm sure most of us that have followed college football for any amount of time never thought they'd say, "Hey, UNLV has a shot to be in the college football playoff." But alas, we are not Boise and we are not UNLV. We are Memphis, and Memphis coming off a 34-24. Can I call it a trouncing? That's what it feels like it
Yeah,
was.
I would.
It was a butt kicking. It's one of those games, Brian, where I don't think the score really indicated how different the game was. Tulane looked distracted. Um, Looked like, as Larry and I always talk about, there were 100 places they'd rather been than Ullman Stadium. What maybe surprised you a little bit about the game on Thursday night?
I guess I mean, even last week's episode. I mean, I questioned whether or not Tulane was really up for it. Um, but they looked to, and I guess in my opinion, they looked not as up to it as I thought. I mean, I thought they'd be a little bit more amped up than they would, but it seemed like when Memphis uh, came out, strong and punched them in the mouth. I was like, maybe they fell back, a little bit more than I would have originally thought. But I thought they would put up a more of a fight. I mean, I guess that's why I was a little surprised. But I thought Memphis would be amped up for this. This is their, it's that old cliche. This is their Super Bowl or this is their college football playoff. But I mean, since they're out of it, they wanted to make a statement. This is, they had to play for themselves. They had to play for the city and really play, you know, mistake-free football. That the mistakes they had in the past this year, put it behind them, and really go out and play 4 quarters of football like they know they can. And I thought they did that. I mean, it was really dominant performance by Memphis in all aspects. So I mean, kudos to the coaching staff for getting the kids ready. And I mean, if Tulane ends up beating Army, which I'm not sure they can, I think that's really going to be a really good matchup. But I remember Gary last week called Memphis a fraudulent. What was a fraudulent record? I mean, one same thing could be said about Tulane. So, but yeah, it was a great performance by Memphis. Memphis fans were like, well, why didn't we see this? All year? But that's just the way it goes. it's the little things. And a few years ago, our podcasts were talking about in the midst of Silverfield's 8-win season, or was it 6-6 or 7-6 seasons? Those little things mounted up to big things. Well, you take a look at this season. There's very few. We can point to 2 games really where the little things killed you. So if you look at it that aspect, Memphis is definitely improving. But man, you're really kicking yourself for that UTSA game, because that you were close. You were so close, and that's what hurts the most. I know a lot of fans, are out there that saying, "Oh, this is a very weak conference. This is that." But it's not. I don't think it is as weak as people think it is. I mean, I think it's a pretty good conference, and I still think it's the best group of 6 conference there is, even though Memphis is not in the playoffs, and more than likely Boise is. But when you take a look at the Boise's conference and Memphis's conference, I mean, 9 times out of 10, it's going to come from on the Memphis side.
Yeah, I think the AAC, and we will add our friend Larry Marley in here now. Larry, how are you this evening, sir?
Well, you guys know I was late, so my apologies. Uh, we had talked about this the other day, and I was like, "Oh, I'll be fine. The flight will be fine." Yeah, it wasn't fine. So, but I am traversing through the new terminal in Memphis International Airport. So, and it is lovely if you haven't visited. I do not recommend that you visit right after Thanksgiving. So that is my pro travel tip. So anyway, sorry I missed the start, but we got the full Ryan Silverfield experience on Thanksgiving. I mean, the full experience, guys. Did we not?
Yeah, but in a good way. I mean, I
Yes.
know where you're going, but definitely in a good way. We got the kind of game he wants. When you look down just going through the stats here, Memphis doubled Tulane in time of possession. And I want to say Tulane was like fourth or fifth in the country coming in to Thursday's game. They held Mekhi Hughes to 15 yards on 9 carries. They forced 3 turnovers. How about the play of Cortland Marsh? That's one of the things that Ryan talks about a lot, is having different guys step up at different times. And Cortland Marsh is a guy who's actually redshirting this year, but absolutely played his tail off on Thursday in New Orleans. But you're right. We got the full this when people say, what does Coach Silverfield want a Memphis team to look like? What you saw Thursday night in Tulane, that is what Memphis, that is what if you said, draw me a picture of what I want Memphis to look like, that is the perfect example of what Ryan Silverfield wants out of Memphis.
I just think that here we are. This is a team that, um, you know, earlier in the year, they just looked like they were underachieving. And then the last 2 weeks, for some reason, they looked like exactly what we thought we were going to see the whole year. And guys, I wish I could explain it. I just wish I had a reason for it.
Well, there was no pressure. That's part of it to me is, you know, when when we got to the end of our semesters when we were in college, and we either had an F or we had an A, we just didn't have the pressure. So we tended, even us, we tended to do better. And Jeb brings up a great point. Everybody's got to remember we had no DeRosier for a stretch. We obviously have no Sutton Smith. And that was noticeable because you saw on Thursday what kind of a weapon DeRosier is. And you saw that personified on Thursday, because here's a guy that can run the football and can catch the football out of the backfield. Mario Anderson clearly did great things. 24 carries, 177 yards, averaged 7.5 yards a carry. But I would venture to say that DeRosier was more important in this game than Anderson because he gives you, Brian, he gives you that other dimension. He gives you that, that kind of speed, almost thunder and lightning type approach.
Yeah, and I think with Coach Cranzi, the way he calls games, I mean, he not to say he's a better play caller when you have both players. It's definitely easier for him to call plays when you have that thunder and lightning type. And like you said, when DeRosier was down, I mean, you saw, I mean, the play calling was different. And it just Memphis is not the team where you can have a one back. It's not a one back system anymore. I don't think you'll ever see Memphis be the type, and we're just even college football nowadays, where you have a one back, D'Angelo Williams anymore. I just don't. I don't. I think that's in the past, and from here on out, you're going to need someone that's a bruiser, and then someone that can catch the ball out of the backfield and be your thunder and lightning.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things, and not to get too far off on a tangent here, but that's one of the things that makes what Ashton Genty at Boise State is doing so special because you don't see that anymore. You don't see a guy that comes in, plays 3 downs, can catch the ball out of the backfield a little bit, can block. I mean, that's if I had to nitpick one area with DeRosier, that's probably it but Mario Anderson is a tremendous blocker in the backfield, so you can leave him in the game more. And I think that's what you're seeing now is finally 12 weeks in, Memphis is comfortable, Larry, leaving some guys in the game that maybe without the option to go, maybe that's it. Maybe without the option to go to the other guy, you're not as comfortable leaving Mario Anderson out there on 3rd and 11.
Well, I think that's one thing for sure. And also, DeRosier is a little bit quicker than Anderson. And so on the stretch plays, he gets to the hole a little faster. The guys don't have to hold their blocks as long. So don't underestimate the fact that what you saw was DeRosier getting to the edge on plays that Anderson couldn't. And so what you saw was their defense get stretched, which is something that we hadn't been able to do. We talked about earlier in the year how they ran this.
Larry, you're cutting out on us there. Brian?
Yeah, I'll just go back
Sorry about that.
Oh, no, you're good. You want to continue now? Okay, I was going to talk about the Memphis offense again on how balanced it was. Yeah, I mean, when you take a look, I mean, you had 218 yards passing, 236 yards, rushing. I mean, it's nice to see Memphis have that balanced attack, and maybe that threw Tulane off for a loop a little bit. That it was so balanced. Memphis defense to me did a fantastic job. Penalties was the only thing. I mean, Memphis had 6 penalties, and they were still dominant. I mean, you can nitpick a little bit on some things, but the penalties to me were a little bit of an eyesore during that game. But if we're nitpicking that, I mean, you really have to search.
Well, 3 of them were on one drive. The 3 of them were on
Yeah.
one play, actually, 45 yards. And Larry, what I think that we see with, talking about stretching is Memphis has all season with Blankensee and Taylor been able to stretch the field vertically. But now with guys like DeRosier, and Blankensee on jet sweeps and stuff, you can stretch the field horizontally as well.
Correct. And that's the point I was trying to make when I cut out. Is that when you stretch horizontally, that's where defenses get really, really pressured. And you saw that with Tulane. They couldn't cover the edges. And that's actually what opened the game up for Memphis. If you go back and watch the tape, which I invite everybody to do, go back and watch, their linebackers started to flow. And that's actually what opened up that long run for Anderson to seal the game. Is their linebackers were flowing. because we were stretching them laterally.
And
And
once
Seth has
he
been
got
very, yeah, Seth has been very accurate the past couple of games as well. I mean, just you don't see a lot of overthrown balls, underthrown, or I mean, he's been spot on, and that's been a major improvement.
yeah, and I think, with Larry's point on that last touchdown that Anderson ran to seal it, everybody's flowing one way, and once Anderson gets past that first line, it's over. He's gone. And the other play that kind of stands out to me, I think, was on that same drive when Seth actually kept the ball on the little, zone read they like to do. He kept it, went around left end, and got the first down, and that was the end of the game. I think that was actually on the last drive when they just needed a first down to kind of clean things up. But you know, it was probably honestly Memphis's best performance. Yeah, and Seth probably hurt a little bit after the Charlotte debacle. I mean, because that was probably, I haven't dug back statistically, but that had to be either his worst or his nearly worst game as a Tiger. Was he wasn't accurate. Memphis couldn't get anything going on offense, against a team that fired their coach, and it was just one of those deals that I think Seth did. But I also think that, again, Memphis has had nothing to lose these last 2 weeks. You saw them put their foot down on UAB's neck and kind of choke them out, and then they did the same thing to what is a pretty good Tulane team. Nobody loves Tulane more than Tulane sometimes here, especially recently, and they've been good. They've had success, and they were pretty good this year, but they looked very distracted, and of course, I will be shocked if John Summerall's the coach at Tulane next year. I'm at that mindset of I just don't think he's going to be there next year. I think somebody is going to swoop him up. But if they don't, then the rumors probably certainly had a lot or something to do with that. But I think a lot of credit goes, Brian, you said it earlier, to this Memphis staff for getting the kids motivated, getting them up, ready to play, and saying, look, we're not going to the championship game. So this is, and I think that 2 or 3 Tigers mentioned that in the post-game interview that, this was our championship game because we knew we couldn't go. So this was ours. And if you guys are on Twitter and Jeb does this great thing every week where he goes back and he puts Memphis plays to the opposing play-by-play radio guys. There is, I tell you, I needed to drink some water after listening to how salty their play-by-play guy got on several of our long plays there. I thought Tulane was freshwater town, but apparently not. It's pretty salty. But yeah, I mean, you go back and you watch that game, but I mean, I think every team this year that is sitting at 9-3 versus 10-2, whatever that looks like, I think, Brian, we can all go back and point to plays and point to things and go, oh man, if we would have just done that, or man, if this would have just gone differently, to what hear them tell it, there's nothing Tulane could have done differently. But Memphis can obviously go back and point to those 4 things. But Memphis left no doubt on Thursday. They left no doubt who the better team was on Thursday.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, another thing that I was looking at is the turnovers. Memphis did not turn the ball over. And when Memphis got turnovers, they scored points. And it wasn't just, a field goal. That they got 3 turnovers and they scored 14 points off those turnovers. So, I mean, yeah, the staff definitely had the players ready, and when they got the turnovers, they definitely capitalized on it and made those turnovers pay. Hurt Tulane. Like I said, 14 points off those 3 turnovers, and that was one of the many keys for Memphis's win.
What was the Silverfield henna tattoos he had on each arm? I forget what it was, but it was like take the ball, control the ball, or something like that. But hey, people laughed and scoffed at that, but whatever it takes. I mean, that's my whole thing with everybody's like, oh, these coaches are all weird. Like, what was it? PJ Flex Row the Boat and Mike
Mhm.
Norvell's Climb and Silverfield's All In, like whatever it takes to get kids to buy in. Um, and to their credit, this staff had their kids ready to go, and Tulane's didn't. And it, Larry, that really showed up on the field on Thursday. That Tulane not only looked distracted, they looked unprepared for whatever Memphis threw at them.
Yeah, and I made the comparisons during the game, some of my family, to how Memphis looked when we played Temple, when it was very obvious that Fuente was going to be gone. And how, I don't know if a lot of people may not remember that game, but in 2015, we had lost to Navy the week before, and then they just were deflated and weren't there at all. I don't remember if we just lost to Houston. I don't remember the details, but no, we went to Temple and got killed. And I'm just going to say it like this: that game, the game against Temple, that's exactly the same way that I saw Tulane. Their players were just they wanted to be anywhere else but at Ullman, anywhere. And hey, look, Memphis came out and punched them in the mouth. And I don't know that Tulane was ready to get punched in the mouth. I really don't. If you guys will recall the end of last week, I said that. Like, if Memphis comes out and punches them in the mouth, how do they respond?
Yeah, I think they just expected to see the Memphis that we saw against Charlotte and Middle Tennessee and Rice and all those teams. And for some reason UAB is keeping Trent Dilfer. They are so bad. But I just think that Tulane thought, you know what, we have a lot to play for and we have the chance to host, and Memphis is just going to come down here and roll over. And that just wasn't the case. And Memphis was ready to play, and Tulane just wasn't ready. And whatever excuses they want to use to feel better about it, whatever the excuse is of, oh well, we'll, shucks, our coach is leaving or whatever. But to be that unprepared, there's only one of two things that cause that. Either kids think they can just roll, and this starts at the top, can just roll the ball out there and win, or everybody is distracted thinking about something else, because Tulane had a lot at stake. Like if Tulane
Yeah.
wins that game and then UNLV upsets Boise, it's probably Tulane not only winning the Group of Five bid, but they probably get the first round bye the way things are shaking out. And it's just, so you have to point to something else, because you can't say, well, they had nothing to play for. The fate was already decided, because this wasn't an NFL deal where it's like, all right, well, we know we're playing at Army. We know we're playing in the championship game. We know where it's going to be. There was no need for us to really, go out there and throw ourselves out and possibly get somebody hurt. But I mean, when Memphis holds a top 5 back in the country to 15 yards, that's more than just, oh, Memphis was up to play the game. That is, Tulane wasn't they weren't there mentally. And you looked at John Summerall, and he's not really a rah-rah guy anyway, but he just kind of seemed there. Like that'd be the best way to describe Tulane. They were just there, and whatever happened, and oh well, what are you going to do? And I was pleasantly surprised to see the majority of their fans kind of tip their hats to Memphis, because they have sort of forgotten who they are over the last couple of years, where they've had a ton of success over the last 3 years, but they went a very long time without success, and a lot of them have lacked a little bit of humility. But it's just been weird to me that, so what are they, 9-3? Is that right? Or 9-3. And Memphis is at 10-2, and several other programs I've seen are at 9-3, 10-2, and like everybody's disappointed. And I'm like, what's going on? I mean, you're 9-3 at Tulane. Like at Tulane, with a new coach, a new QB, a new system, you're 9-3 and playing for a conference championship game.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know when you look at the Memphis fan base, I mean, how many times have we seen on Twitter, just people just bashing the state of the football program, it's astonishing to me because, I mean, you're 10-2. I mean, if you take a look at our preseason podcast, I think I was the only one that said 11-1, but I think both of you guys had 10-2, and I think most everybody out
Yep.
there would have said 10-2. So I mean, the only quote unquote disappointment would be you have two conferences lost instead of one conference and losing to FSU. But at the end result, you're still 10-2 and 10 back-to-back 10-win seasons. Never been done before at Memphis. I mean, there is plenty to like and love about this football program. It's just I'm just very surprised by the I don't know just the not it's not anger, but just the animosity towards the football program. I mean, I don't get it. I think this football program is still trending upwards. I know people don't like the American Conference, but you're primed, and we will. I'm sure we'll talk about the transfer portal, but I think they get a quarterback in the transfer portal. As long as you have a decent quarterback next year, Memphis is still right there in the conversation of AAC championship. I mean, I don't understand. There's a lot to love about this program.
Larry?
I think that Silverfield redeemed any animosity I had. He redeemed Thursday night. If I had any anger towards, I'm still sore about the UTSA loss because I think it's inexcusable. But they went out and kicked Tulane's ass, and made them like it, and that is the type of football that I said earlier in the year that they weren't fun. That was fun. It was enjoyable. The game was exciting, not just because Memphis was winning, but the way they were playing. They were just kicking their tail up on both sides of the ball. And when your team is flying around the field, making plays, doing, DeRosier running all over, that's fun. And, that's how, you have to have a program like that. And guys, that was just, I think he redeemed any question that you had about the year. I think that win, as convincing as it was, the way they did it, I don't think there's any question that Ryan goes into the offseason with a lot of momentum. Do we have to start looking around to see if Ryan going to get picked up by somebody? I think that's a possibility.
Yeah, and we've joked about it in the group chat about, every time a job comes open, you hear the same names, kind of come up, and some of them are pie in the sky or whatever. But some of the jobs that have opened, it's been really funny what people have heard certain names mentioned for certain jobs, and it's crazy. But if you've seen anything now, you've seen what you've seen, and let's be real. Yes, you can go get a quarterback. This is where I do think college football has changed, because in the previous era, which hasn't been that long ago, Ryan Silverfield should be on the first boat out of town, the first bus out of town. New quarterback. You're going to have new receivers. You're going to have a new offensive line. You're going to have a new retooled defense. So back in the old days, like 2019, you would leave like Mike did. You'd leave because you don't want to have to break in a new quarterback because you don't know how long you're going to get. Well, now you just go in the portal and you find a graduate transfer, or you find somebody who isn't happy with their playing time, or somebody who maybe that coaching staff has changed. And so now you can bring a experienced guy in, even if it is just to kind of tide you over for a year. You don't have to rush development of players. You can go get the pieces you need. Although Memphis, honestly, and we will talk about this and look at it in depth as we go, especially after tomorrow and the rest of this week in the portal. But like Memphis is going to need a lot. Like Memphis needs a lot on the offensive line. They're going to need a ton on defense. Obviously, quarterback is a concern. Wide receiver is a concern. I think they lose like 75, 80% of their catches from this year. Tight end is a concern. Like there are concerns, but it is easier to address. And what Jeb is saying is correct, and Justin as well. And it shows, like with Mike, he went from being 13-0 to 2-10, and having to change both coordinators and an offensive line coach, and it can turn on you quickly. But here's the truth about what happened to Mike: he missed on a quarterback. Like, he missed on DJU. He put all his eggs in the DJU basket, and the basket got turned over and trampled in the produce aisle. And that's where the transfer portal giveth and the transfer portal taketh away. So what you have to do now is you have to be a combination of Mike and Justin, in that you have to be a tremendous evaluator of talent, which is what Justin's strength really was. He made Paxton Lynch a first-round NFL draft pick. And if you go back and you watch Paxton, he was a one-read quarterback. And if it wasn't there, he'd tuck it or he'd throw it away. So you have to be a player developer, but you also have to be a good judge of talent to know, okay, I can get these 4 guys, plug them in, and then all I have to have is Trent Dilfer at quarterback. Going back to being a game manager, then all I have to have is Trent Dilfer. I don't need, we didn't need Seth Hennigan to be Brady White. We needed Seth Hennigan to be Seth Hennigan and just be the best Seth he could be. Just like we didn't need Brady to be Raleigh. You don't need guys to be the last guy. You just need them to be very, very good at what they're at. But yes, your margins are really thin, but you do have to balance that we got to balance keeping our recruits happy and making sure that we don't have to rely on a true freshman for 6 weeks to get Memphis through to their conference schedule. See, you've got to do both, because even though, yes, it's about NIL, it's about money, and kids are probably a little more patient to sit at this point, because especially if they're getting paid. But at the end of the day, I don't care what people say, kids want to play. They don't want to sit. They want to, you don't get to be a high-level Division I football player being cool sitting on the bench.
And if you take a look at Silverfield in the transfer portal era, he's killed it. I mean, this is going to be the 3rd year. The first year, he had Memphis ranked in the top 20 in the transfer portal rankings. Last year, he was 8th. If you take a look at all the guys that he got in the portal, I can think of maybe one area that he hasn't killed: kicking. I mean, and he's missed on kicking.
Let's don't go there.
I understand. I was like, but in this day and age, you have to recruit well in your high school rankings. So, yeah, he's done phenomenal in that. He had, before the transfer portal era, he had Memphis in the 40s. Since the transfer portal, he's been in the high 50s, low 60s, and I think that's where the sweet spot's going to be for Memphis. Right now, they're currently ranked 65th. And I'm sure there's going to be more flipping going on, that he'll have kids flip from other schools to come to Memphis. So I think he'll be around the 60 mark. But that transfer portal, that's going to be vital for teams like Memphis. And you have to give it to Silverfield. He's absolutely killed the transfer portal market. And if you take a look at this transfer market, he's going to need a quarterback. He'll look for a running back, but I don't think that's a need. That's just great. I think that Memphis has the running backs on the roster now. But obviously you're going to need some offensive line, defensive line. But I think that the most important thing is that quarterback, because now Silverfield is in the same position where Mike Norvell was last year. You need a quarterback, and you can't miss. So for Silverfield, the most important thing for me is the quarterback position, and he can't miss.
But you've got,
and I don't think he miss.
You got a kid sitting there on the bench right now. That, I know he's a freshman. He's a redshirt freshman. But you put Seth Hennigan out there as a true freshman 4 years ago. So I don't know that you have to go get a quarterback.
Oh, he's got to go get somebody, 100%.
You think so?
Absolutely, because if you didn't play Maiden this year in cleanup duty, and you trotted Harrison Boyd out there at the end of games, what is that? I mean, who was it that we had the same debate about a couple years ago? Oh, who was the kid that everybody's like, why is he not playing? I can't believe we can't put him out there. Was it
is it the one from LSU? Parrish?
Yeah,
Parrish?
yeah. And
Yes,
it turned
Parrish,
out that
yes.
the guy couldn't grasp a playbook if it was in both his hands. So, and that's not to say that, I was really stunned they didn't have some plays for Maiden, but, because that's what they tried to do with, was it Parrish or Paris? What was his name?
Yeah, I remember.
Anyway.
He started the game against UCF.
I think it was Parrish.
Yeah, right. He had to start, and it went about as well as you expected. And Jeb's asking, well, what about the guy they've got committed? Well, that's Antoine Hill Jr., and that's great. But he's never played a down of college football, and so that's why I think that if you can rent a QB this year, that gives you time to flesh out Maiden or Harrison Boyd's still going to be on the roster too, right? Yeah, and you flesh out Hill and Maiden and Boyd, and you kind of see what you have. Maybe Maiden or Hill are a guy that you have a package for that you bring in the game. But I think you absolutely have to go get an experienced QB. Again, if for nothing else, then, if Maiden's ready to go or Boyd's ready to go or if Hill's up and ready to go, if your guy gets hurt, then you go to the other guy. But Memphis is going to benefit again next year, guys, from a super, super favorable schedule. I mean, they do have those two big back-to-back powerhouse road games at Georgia State and Troy.
Wow.
Thanks, Tom Bowen. Appreciate that.
And let me just say that if you're not at the Troy game, that there is is it a booster that will curse you out for not being there? We saw that on Twitter the other day.
Well, I will tell you, if for any reason other than the Memphis Troy game, you have a chance to go to Troy, Alabama, pass.
Don't.
No offense to both the fine people of Troy. Actually, I don't mind playing Troy. I just don't think we should be playing them there. But my point is, if you don't have a quarterback, let's say he decides, because the other position of need is receiver. I think Memphis has got to go find a couple of targets in the receiver. Although Brady Cluse played well at the end of the year, but you got to have a couple. Memphis needs a speed guy. They got to go get somebody with some speed.
Yes.
Maybe DT Sheffield from North Texas. Just say it. But you go get somebody with some speed that can change the game. Yeah. No, I think we still have. Jeb's asking, is this the end of the Tom Bowen farewell tour? I want to say we still have another road game against Southern or Southern Miss.
No, we got Southern Miss, but that was not Tom Bowen. But you do have Southern Miss.
Yeah, but you know what? The home schedule should be bad next year because we're going to be in the heart of the renovations. I still will go on record publicly on December the 3rd that there's no way Arkansas plays at Memphis next year. I don't care what people say. Hunter Yurchek's not letting Arkansas come to Memphis next year. But back to football. You do have the benefit of, if you can't get a quarterback, you do have 3 or 4 weeks maybe to get somebody broken in. But that.
Yeah, because those first three games are, man, Memphis
Let me see if I
win
can pull up the schedule here.
It's you play Chattanooga August 30th, then you play at Georgia State, and then you play at Troy. So I mean, those 3 games should be easy wins. I mean, seriously. So yeah, you definitely have time if you don't get a quarterback in the transfer portal, and you're going to trot out Arrington Maiden, who I mean I have confidence in, but again, he's a true freshman. I mean, he's going to be a redshirt freshman. Or you have Hill. He's highly touted. He's a 4-star, 4-star out of high school. But you just never know how they translate into college. But yeah, you will have 3 games over a month to have your guy ready for Arkansas. And I'm going to say it at the Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium. Let me
Yeah,
and John go at it.
Zero chance. Zero
yeah,
chance.
and I just said in the chat to Jeb, I'm going to even go on record. I don't think Memphis will play Arkansas at all, because what I think will happen is Arkansas will try the switcheroo, and
Just like
we'll see what this athletic department's like, and see if it's the same one that let Missouri out of the deal. And yes, Memphis got $1 million, whatever. Let Missouri out of the deal, and then give them a basketball game in return. Now, let me start by saying, I would be right now, as it stands, 100% in favor of a home Memphis and Arkansas basketball series. As of today, I would be 100% in favor of that.
There is no way
I
Calipari
could
comes back
not
here unless
wait.
he is made to. I mean, they would have to, and I'm. This is absolutely no exaggeration. For John Calipari to walk voluntarily into FedEx Forum to play the Memphis Tigers, he would have to be under severe duress, maybe even penalty of death. I mean, he literally, and if you don't believe that, like I've talked to some people that know John, and it's not happening.
But you know what? And that's fine. I'm really just kidding, because that's fine.
I know you are,
I don't care.
But that would be a
It'd be
hell of
funny.
a thing, right?
It would be
That'd
great.
be a heck of a thing.
So the Memphis home schedule next year is Chattanooga, Arkansas, Navy, Tulane, Tulsa, and South Florida. Road games are okay. Maybe the road schedule's worse. At Georgia State, at Troy, at East Carolina, at Florida Atlantic, and at Rice. Okay, maybe the road schedule's a little bit worse, because at least
I mean, look, you do get to go to Boca, and that's not a terrible place to go. But all the rest of
that's going to
those,
be like a Wednesday night. You know what I mean? Like a Thursday night ESPN 7 football.
You guys know where Georgia State's football stadium is, right? It's the old Brave Stadium.
I thought they built a new one. Am I wrong?
Last week I was there a couple of weeks ago. It still said Georgia State on it, but maybe now. Anyway, that's where the college is, regardless. So either way, if you've ever been there, that's not the best part of Atlanta. Not terrible, but it's not the best.
Oh, you're right. That is.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm telling you, it's they repurposed it. It's weird looking, is the best way I can say it. It
could be worse. It could be the launching pad. It could be the old Fulton County Stadium.
That was a dump. But anyway, so yeah, so that'd be interesting. And then of course we've already talked about Troy. So and if you have any desire to go to East Carolina, don't.
Well, one funny thing that my buddy Dan told me about East Carolina, one of the things that the AAC sort of forced them to do is, used to, you flew into Wilmington and took the bus over to Greenville, or you had to fly in somewhere else. Well, now they've lengthened the runway, so you can actually get into Wilmington. You can get into the air in Greenville. You can get in a much easier capacity. But still, as our friend Jeb has always said, it's always stuck with me. Greenville, North Carolina is one of those places you got to mean to go. Like, nobody's ever accidentally gone to Greenville. That's not something that somebody's like, I was just driving around the other day and I thought, let's go to Greenville. No, that never happens. Well, they're going to have a new coach. Let's see. They're going to have a new coach next year. Anybody else? Rice will have a new coach. Florida Atlantic will have a new coach.
Yep.
We know Arkansas won't. Sam Pittman got the dreaded, what do they call that? When they vote of confidence.
I like how they said he's decided not to retire.
Yeah, right. Instead of we decided not to retire him. Did Tulsa? They didn't get fired, did they? Did Tulsa's coach get fired? I know we've got literally 6 or 7. Half the AAC will be new coaches next year. Oh, and Temple, at UAB, Temple. That's the other one. We're at UAB, so maybe the home schedule. All right, I'm not going to knock the home schedule.
The home schedule's not that bad in my opinion, because you
have a road schedule that stinks.
Yeah, Navy and Tulane. That's 3 good games right there.
and hopefully they put the Tulane game at the end of the year. Like, we had that little thing going with Houston for a while where it was always Black Friday when it was here, and it was the Saturday after Thanksgiving when it was there because they refused to play on Black Friday down there. And like we've played Tulane at the end of the season the last couple years. Because
I
if
like
we're
that.
gonna
Memphis Tulane at the end of the year. That just seems right to me.
if we're gonna have a rival in this league, is there really anybody else? I mean, because UAB just is so forced because they just are so bad and don't have any money, so they can't make the program any better. I mean, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. This is a hard league to be in. Not, and again, um, I'm not an AAC hater. I don't think it's a good league, especially with the deflections from the defections from the Mountain West to the Pac, whatever that's going to look like. I don't think the AAC is a good league, but I don't have the hatred that a lot of people have. I I just feel like this league is so unbalanced. I think if I've got a complaint about the AAC, and I posted something about this on Twitter today, Bill Conley's FPI and SP Plus that he does over for the ESPN. So you have strength of record, strength of schedule, FPI, and then I forget there's another number you have. And the goal is for those numbers to be very far apart because if they are very close together, you're absolutely terrible. And of the 14 AAC teams, 4 aren't terrible. And obviously Memphis, Tulane, Navy, Army weren't terrible. Everybody else is god awful. This conference is terrible and bad. Basketball is even worse than football. Basketball is in much worse shape than football is in terms of this league. But we could, I'll leave this to Devin and Sam and those guys to chop up. But at least when Memphis basketball was in a terrible league before, they absolutely got to dominate, and they still did the things they wanted to do anyway. But you're in a position in this league in football, guys, where I think if you don't win the league and go 11-1, 12-0, you're screwed because you're not screwed if you play a decent out of conference schedule. But when you're playing at Georgia State and at Troy, you can't make up any ground if you drop a game you have no business dropping in the league. So I don't know. I don't hate the AAC, but I find me in the middle. Shocking, I know. But I see why people that dislike the AAC so much, why they do, because you are in a spot. Like if Memphis or Tulane is not 12-0, like Army could beat Tulane 65-3 on Saturday. And Boise and UNLV could play to a 10-9 brawl and it wouldn't matter. One of them is going to go to the playoff and Army can't snip. Army is one spot ahead of Memphis and they're undefeated in the league. So I don't know. I'm so torn because I feel like, if the problem you have, and we'll get kind of businessy here before we get into recruiting, but the problem you have in this league is you have schools like Memphis, Tulane. I'm assuming we don't know anything really about their finances because they're private, but you have Memphis and you have Tulane, USF that are willing and able to make because you got to be both. You got to be willing and able. You got to be both to make the proper investments to keep up. With the house settlement coming down, you're going to have the kind of the reinvention of scholarship limits, but you're going to have to be able to be, again, willing and able. If you're UAB, I'm certain that you're willing, but you're not able. If you're Charlotte, I'm certain that you're willing, but you're not able. If you're North Texas, I'm certain that you're willing. You're probably closer to being able than anybody else. If you're FAU, you're willing and possibly able, but I think that's the rub on the AAC is outside of those top, and you can't put Navy and Army in that boat or on that battlefield, pun intended, because they're not like all the other schools. So you have to be able to keep up with Memphis and Tulane and USF and what they're investing in their programs from a pure finance. I'm not talking about facilities. I don't want to hear any of that. I don't want to hear about stadiums or any of that. From a pure investment perspective, you have to be willing and able to keep up with Memphis, Tulane, and USF. And guys, that is over and above everything else. That is the problem with the AAC, is the lack of the ability or the willingness to invest in programs financially. That's it. That's the business side of the AAC in a nutshell.
Well, and here's the thing, guys, and this is just sort of the investment that Memphis has made in football in the last, I don't know, 6, 7, well, 10 years, I guess, but certainly the last 6, 7 years has been so much more than you see in most of the other programs. And John, this is kind of what you're talking about. But even more than that, the University of Memphis owns the city. And most of the other schools in the AAC can't say that. Yes, there's a lot of Tennessee fans. Yes, there's a lot of Ole Miss fans. Yes, there's a lot of, and it's that way in every city. But I don't know that there's a city, maybe Cincinnati and Louisville, but that really own their city. Certainly not in the AAC.
And I forgot, sorry to interrupt, I forgot one AAC school, because Jeb just reminded me. UTSA is another one that is willing and able to invest in that program. It's a new young program, so they haven't really gotten their footing yet, but they're another one definitely willing and able. Go ahead. And Larry, your point is very valid that, even though there are a buttload of other schools here, it's very segmented. When it's Memphis football or Memphis basketball, this is still a University of Memphis town.
Always has been. And the bottom line is, you don't see that level of support and fan base other than, and Tulane has come a long way, but I don't think that they are at the same level as we are in terms of support and fan base. You just don't, and most of the other schools, Rice is a small, private school. Tulsa is a small private school. You just don't see, other than USF. Now they have the potential, and they have the wherewithal to do it, but they haven't, for some reason, been able to consistently do it for a long period of time. And I don't know why that is, guys. I don't know. USF's a tough nut to crack for me.
Yeah, I don't understand how you can be that bad for that long. All right, so let's move from the past. Let's quickly talk about the bowl game, and then I want Brian to kind of take the lead on recruiting, because recruiting is crazier now than it's ever been. And Godspeed to the NLI. This is its final, its final hoorah here this week, I think. And they've moved to some. I think it's the same thing. It's just a different name of contract, but. All right, so the bowls that Memphis has been most closely, I don't want to say associated with, but we've heard more than any, are Fenway Bowl, Independence Bowl, Gasparilla Bowl, and Birmingham. Those are the 4 that we have been closely associated with. I've been told that now Myrtle Beach is on the table. And then, reading some tea leaves, I think Frisco is probably in there somewhere. But here's the deal. So it's no secret that Memphis would prefer, I think if, anybody from the Memphis Athletic Department, which I know at least one person over there is listening right now, or will hear this later, it's no secret that they would prefer a pre-Christmas warm destination. I think I don't think I'm breaking any news here that would be a preference. And of those, the only one that fits both of those categories, and a game against a Power 5 opponent. I think those are the 3. And let me also say this about Power 5. A Power 5 opponent that is pleased to be there, right? Like we played Auburn in the last Birmingham Bowl, I think it was 18. They were really happy to be there. Or was it 15? We played Wake one year and Auburn the other one. But they were happy to be there. It wasn't like a we finished, we started 7-0 and finished 7-5. They were happy to be there. By all accounts, Gasparilla would probably be against Florida, which, let the chips fall where they may. They would be happy to be there. Frisco would give Seth Hennigan a farewell at home, but man, I just don't want to play in that bowl game. It's this. What did I say? It wasn't really like the 17th. It's a terrible date.
Yeah,
It's like Tuesday
December
before
17th.
Christmas. Yeah, it's a Tuesday night at like 8:30. And keep in mind, as you're looking at potential bowl destinations, Auburn was in 15. That's right. Memphis plays Mississippi. Almost slipped up in basketball. John Calipari would have caught me slipping there. Memphis plays Mississippi in basketball on the 28th. And yes, in the past, Memphis has played bowl games the same day they've played a big basketball game. Memphis played Syracuse when they went to that god-awful St. Petersburg Bowl. And I think they got drilled by South Florida, and the basketball team got drilled. It was not a good day for the Tigers. But I'll tell you, the head count is not what it's been in the past at the athletic department. That's no secret. Everybody could probably say that. So they would prefer to not play on the same day. That'd be a preference for them, because I wish I could get somebody on to explain like the logistics of a bowl game, because it's not like, let's say Memphis was playing Boise in Texas Stadium the first game of the season, let's say August 30th. Now, I'm making that up, of course, but you have like a whole 6-8 month window to get that figured out. You get 3 weeks to figure out the bowl game. Yes, the hotel room blocks are taken care of, but you've still got to get people there and figure out, all right, how do we get tickets sold? And now we got to get the truck there, and all this planning, like logistically. So if you tied me down today, I've been on the Fenway train, because I thought, Mississippi State's, their athletic department's got a lot to do. Or not a lot to do, rather, from the football side. Because I just thought, I was like, that'll probably be the best opponent. But I mean, that's looking, I think that's the opposite of what the coaches want and what the staff and the program wants. That's a post-Christmas. There are no nice days. I'm sorry, Brian. I know you love it up there, but I can count on one hand in Chicago the number of nice late December days there were in the year and a half I was up there. And I think you're going to get a middling 6-6 Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech. Although I want to say publicly on the record, and I don't want to get too far off base because I do want to get to recruiting here in a minute. No team, and I don't complain about officiating. I'm never that guy. Georgia Tech got absolutely hosed against Georgia. Sidebar over. So I think I've never seen officiating that bad, and I feel like I say that every 3 or 4 weeks, and they take
business decisions were made, John. Decisions were made.
Anyway, I would say, now that Myrtle's kind of been brought into play, I think it's between those two. I think if they can get a P5 opponent to Myrtle, because the ACC has like 38 teams of 39 teams eligible for bowl games. The SEC is almost as ridiculous. I think they've got like 13 of whatever they have now. The ACC's got 12. I think, like, it's ridiculous. So they've got to find places to put people, and there are only 82. There are exactly the number of teams they need for bowls. There's 41 and have 82 teams. So they got to find places to put people. So if you can get an AAC team or an ACC team or an SEC team in Myrtle, I'm okay. I mean, I don't like the date. I'm not a huge fan of that date, but it's the Monday before, right? 23rd. Yeah.
It's the 23rd, right? It's right before Christmas.
So I would go Myrtle, Gasparilla. Those would be my two. Myrtle, my only hesitation with Myrtle is I don't know what it pays. And yes, I know the money goes to the conference and it gets divided up, but I was not good at math. But I can tell you that the more money that goes in, the more money that everybody gets from it being divided up. So if the bowl pays out $750,000 versus $1.25 million, I want the 1.25 every single time, because that is part of my downfall with the AAC too. I feel like the world we should live in is that a rising tide should lift all boats, but we all know that that's not how any of this works. So if you made me today put a percentage on things, I would say I'm 6.275 out of 10 that it'll be the Gasparilla Bowl.
For me, what I because I'm a Northern, I want Fenway against Pitt in the snow. I'm the only one. I know it. People will hate me for it. I understand that. I want a when I look at the matchups, I just think a Pitt against Memphis would really be a good matchup. So I mean that's what I want. What I think will happen, I think it's going to be Gasparilla Bowl. So to me, it's Fenway or Gasparilla, and I'll be fine with either or because yes, I'm a cold weather fan, but I also went to high school in the Tampa area. I love you too.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm the person that believes college football should not be played north of the Mason-Dixon line, especially after October 15th. Like it all belongs in the South.
November 1st, but no,
I'm a NASCAR guy.
Well, I was going to say what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid Memphis will be in the Birmingham Bowl. So
I don't
even though
so.
I think it's going to be, I just have a weird feeling they'll get stuck at the Birmingham again.
The only reason I
hope
don't
not.
think so is that would be Memphis's third trip to that game in 10 years. And, I talked to two, and I'm working on an article about all this, but I talked to two different bowl executives, and they kind of laid the process out, not to give everything away, but basically here's how it works. They go to the school and they say, hey, Brian Mosh University, we're looking at Larry University in our trying to think of a Brother Printer Bowl in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Would you be interested in playing in that game? The school says yes. The school says no. We go down the list. So then what we do is we go back to our sponsor and we say, all right, Tropical Getaways Travel, you are the sponsor of the Tropical Getaways Travel Bowl in Little Rock. How of these teams, how do you feel? Well, I want Larry University, Bryan University, and Duncan University. Those are the three I would be most interested in. So the bowl then takes that, and they look at things like, have they been here before? How have they historically traveled? And what the sponsors really look at is what their TV numbers look like, because they're not really worried about ratings. What sponsors want, maximum eyeballs on product. That's what, if I were sponsoring a bowl game, what teams can I bring in here that not only would bring the most people to the game, but that people would turn on their TV and watch and go, oh, I want to watch Bryan and Duncan University play each other in football. And so then they take that list and they pare it down. They have a committee, and then they go to the league office and they go to their television partners, which are ESPN, I think, for except what? 2 games,
yeah.
the Sun Bowl, and the Pop-Tart should rule overall. I'm going to go Duke's Mayonnaise Bowl if I had a choice. I don't like Pop-Tarts that much, but anyway. So you're what? It's the Sun Bowl, and there's one other one I think that's on Fox. I think there's two of them that aren't. But you go to league office and you go to ESPN and you say, all right, we want one of these three teams. We want Bryan University, Larry University, or Duncan University versus Charlotte University, Susan University, or John University. And ESPN, and they look at several things. Look at geography, obviously. That is one of the things. Compelling stories would be another thing. Memphis, Virginia Tech, even though neither of the players are still there, compelling story a little bit. Like for instance, if SMU were to have fallen back in the ACC, that's a natural opponent for a 10-2 Memphis to play a former UCF, Cincinnati, Louisville. Like they look for these compelling, because let's be real, they're exhibition games, and the only reason coaches like them is because you get the 15 extra practices. And then they go, all right, well, what's the most compelling TV matchup we can put together that people are going to want to tune in to watch, people are going to want to go see, and has a storyline behind it, because you have to make people want to watch a bowl game. So that's kind of how the process works at a 30,000-foot view. So that's why I feel like something like the Gasparilla Bowl with a Memphis, Florida, or a Memphis, who's next? Arkansas, whatever that looks like. Memphis, Florida makes a lot of sense for geography purposes, but I mean, you're basically going to play a home game in Florida, but that's okay. But then the schools look at payout, but the bowls all say, well, have you been here? And that's why I don't think it's going to be Birmingham, because this would literally be the third trip in less than 10 years. We were there in 15 and 18. We've never been to Shreveport. We've never been to the Gasparilla Bowl. I just said that for Larry. We've never been to Fenway. We've never been to Myrtle Beach. There's a lot of places Memphis has never been to Frisco, although they were in the First Responders Bowl a couple years ago. So you go, all right, are Memphis fans really going to go to Frisco? You'd have to sell that as, a Seth Hennigan homecoming game. Like that's kind of how you'd have to sell it. And would fans turn out to see that? So it's all about story. So that's why I tend to agree. I'm really lean towards either Myrtle or Gasparilla. I think it's going to be one of those two, because you can make a compelling matchup for television. And I think Memphis fans would travel to Tampa. Some Memphis fans would, not this Memphis fan, because he's already got to be in Florida twice in January. But I think Memphis fans would travel, but here's another deal real quick before we get to recruiting. It can literally be any bowl. I mean, there's nothing to say that it couldn't be, it won't be, but it couldn't be the Citrus Bowl because of how and I'm just pulled that one out of thin air, how they try to place teams. And what do you do with, because we had a situation a couple of years ago where we were going to go to Birmingham, but the 3 SEC teams refused to play Memphis, and they wouldn't play Memphis. So that kind of that's how Memphis actually technically the first time in the Liberty Bowl, that's how they ended up in the Liberty Bowl, because no one's, I've never heard anyone say they had a hankering for the Cure Bowl, Jeb. That's all on you. All right. So that's kind of how bowls work. We will find out for sure. All this speculation you'll see all week from Jerry Palm and Brett McMurphy and all the other Kyle Bonagura and Schlabach and all those guys. You'll see it all week back and forth. We will find out Sunday. I'm going to guess we'll know mid-morning. It'll officially come out Sunday afternoon. But I will say, even as a media member, if you are going to buy tickets to a bowl game, it's very important that you buy them through the university, because that's how Memphis gets to bigger and better bowl games. So, hey, Jeb, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you. We're going a little long here. But, Brian, so let's kind of wrap up here with, we've talked past, present, and let's talk about the future. Signing day starts tomorrow and runs
tomorrow. Yes.
Friday, and then the portal opens Monday through the 28th, I think it is.
Yes. Yep.
So walk us through what, maybe not specific names, because I know coaches don't like that kind of stuff to get out and about before they sign on the line, which is dotted. Walk us through what can Memphis fans expect from maybe the early signing period, and again, Godspeed to the NLI, and then through the transfer portal.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting time tomorrow. I mean, some of the ones that obviously have already publicly announced that they're going to sign with Memphis is Wolf Walker. I talked to him. He was originally committed to Marshall, I believe, and then Memphis got him to flip, obviously, to the Tigers. You have another flip, Ian Williams, defensive back from Georgia. He's a 3-star. Wolf Walker is a 3-star linebacker. Madison, a defensive tackle kid who was committed to Arkansas. He flipped to Memphis. He's going to sign with Memphis tomorrow. He already made that public. The one to keep an eye on is that Antoine Hill. Are other teams going to come in at the last moment and push for him to flip? We'll see. If Memphis can hold on to him, he'd be the highest ranked quarterback that Memphis has ever received. And you can't forget about the transfer portal. I mean, you'll see some folks start to commit to Memphis, but there's a lot of offensive linemen that Memphis is looking at. I know there was a center from Harvard that just got an offer from Memphis today. He's going to put it in the message board, his name. He's going to visit Memphis next week. But yeah, you'll see a lot of activity with Memphis in the transfer portal, just like you've seen in the past few years. But it's going to be
Man,
an exciting time.
that
Yeah,
Harvard to Memphis pipeline,
connection.
man, it's growing,
Yeah,
baby.
I'm
It's growing.
telling you, that's
Matt
that. I mean,
Hudson.
and I don't think he's going to have a problem grasping the playbook. I'm just going to say that right now.
No,
All right, Brian.
and,
So
and I mean, yeah, go ahead.
surprises? Do you think? I mean, do you think there
You'll
will be
see
some
surprises because
positives and
FAU
surprises for
Yeah,
Memphis?
because you have FAU that's replaced their coach. So, can Memphis possibly get one of their players who had, a lot of their players that were committed to FAU had offers from Memphis. So we'll see if anyone from FAU flips to Memphis. We'll find that out tomorrow. And some of the others, like the other teams that have new coaching staffs. Now that you have, I think with the new coaching, I think you have 30 days. But I mean, the transfer portal is opening up, like I said, Monday anyway. So, but even after the portal closes, if there's a coaching change, it opens back up for that specific team for 30 days, if I'm not mistaken. So look for Memphis to be very active in the transfer portal. And, as of right now, Memphis has 19 high school commits. And could that grow? I think you'll see that grow probably to, 20 to 23 range. And in my opinion, the rest will be transfer portal. But if everything stands right now, let's just say Memphis has all the commits and everyone signs, they don't get anyone new. You're looking at roughly being the rivals team ranked 65th in the nation. And I know some fans were like, well, we're used to the 40s as in 4 years ago. But as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, in my opinion, Memphis to be successful, a high 50s, low 60s, but very high in the transfer portal, because that's where it's going to be. You want a good mix of both. And like we've talked earlier, Sirfield has done a masterful job, doing both. I mean, he's gotten kids from high school that, some of them impact players like Seth Hennigan, some that will wait a few years before they start getting in there. And then the transfer portal kids. I mean, just the only area, like I said, he's missed is kicking. And he's going to look to rectify that because the Charlotte kicker got offered by Memphis. We'll see if he commits to Memphis or not.
If
But
you're
it's
going to
going to
interrupt
be highly active.
if you're going to interrupt the podcast, you should at least show everybody your face, there, kid. That's dumb.
So this is just a neophyte here, but so and explain to me, Brian, if Memphis loses X number to the portal, can they go and get that same number, or is there still a maximum that you can bring in?
There's still, if I'm not mistaken, there's a maximum, but that maximum number increased. It used to be 85. I think it increased to 105 now.
Yeah, but I think
up over 100.
What he's saying is that didn't it used to be 25?
25.
That you could add, new. So is
yeah.
that changed now with the portal where I could just, if let's say I sign 19 high school kids and
you can have as many
6 guys to the portal, can I go replace those 6 guys in addition to the 25? Or, I don't know how that works.
The transfer portal is wide open. Look at Colorado and Coach Prime. Coach Prime got 60-something players in the transfer portal.
Yeah, 64.
His first year, 64. So I mean, you can get a whole brand new team if you wanted to in the transfer portal. You can just cut all your guys and get all brand new.
I think he signed like 8 high school guys, if memory serves, and got it was literally like 63, 64 kids in the portal.
Yeah.
So for those who, I was kidding earlier about the NIL, wishing it Godspeed. So the NCAA did away with what we've known, or not NIL, NLI, the National Letter of Intent. They've done away with that. It's now a financial aid agreement. It's basically an updated contract. I don't think that applies now. I think that applies in February because I think you're still signing NLIs tomorrow. I don't remember.
I believe so.
Yeah, I think I know it's it's in effect for the 2025 class, so we could be wrong. It could be both, but so no more waiting by the fax machine. Is there even still a fax machine over there? So everybody will be tweeting out, and you'll have kids that do it live and whatnot. But where you're home for that, Brian, is going to be the hard. This is Brian's world. This is something Larry and I. This is not our
Nope.
not our thing. I worry about the
And I'll
guys
have
that
interviews.
Yeah,
I'll have interviews
and
with some of the players that will sign.
and what I've been most impressed with it, and as far as Brian goes, and this is true because I used to lament about how he could keep up with the lives of 18-year-old, 17, 18 year. And now he has to keep up with not just 18-year-olds, but he's got to keep up with the transfer portal and all these other kids, these active kids. And I will say this, I don't know that anybody does it better. And that's the absolute truth. I mean,
especially not in the Memphis area.
No.
For sure.
Last thing I do want to touch on, I thought it was interesting today. We've had this long conversation about, I think at Memphis it's Bo Davidson. It's kind of the general manager type position. That's Bo, right? So it's kind of that GM.
He's very, position. Very important in the transfer portal.
So I don't know if you saw the news today, but Oklahoma has hired the former CEO of AT&T, who left at the end of 2020, and was also the head of the PGA Board of Directors, who left. He left that in 23 to, quote, look at all aspects of the football program. So are you going to start seeing, in addition to GMs, are we going to, and this is a very niche reference that only a few people will get, are we going to start having the Bobs at college football programs? Are you going to start seeing Bob Slidell and for those who don't know, that's an Office Space movie reference, but consultants, are we going to start seeing that? Not on the field, because we've always had the offensive quality control, senior offensive analyst. But are we going to start, Brian, Larry, do you think we start seeing that former CEO of XYZ Corporation comes in and kind of as a consultant to Ed Scott, like is an overseer of the entire program? Do we think maybe that's the next natural progression in this?
Well, I think you saw Stanford bring in Andrew Luck and that's his official title is GM. You're going to see it's going to be a more NFL style hierarchy where you have a president, a GM, and a coach, and they all. So the athletic director is there, and he's doing, but in terms of the way the money that's going to be going through the football program, all that's all going to be handled within that hierarchy. And I think that's what you're ultimately going to see. I don't think it's going to be a consultant. I think it's going to be a flat job. I think you're going to have a president of football operations, a general manager, and a coach. Whereas the coach was doing all of those things, now he's going to be just a coach. And that's where this is headed. I do believe that. Andrew Luck was recently named the general manager at Stanford. And you're going to see things like that where schools are going to come and get somebody out of, and in this case, Oklahoma went to the private sector. And that's another way to do this, right? Is to get somebody to look at how is the business side of it. And then so because the Grizzlies have a director of business operations and a director of basketball operations. Like they're two separate entities, right? And so you're going to see a president whose job is to worry about the business, a general manager whose job is to worry about the football program, and then you're going to have a coach who coaches. And that's where I think you're headed.
And I think coaches, Brian, would be in favor of that because all coaches want to do is coach. They want to evaluate talent and put a game plan together. That's it. That's all they want to do. But I'm curious, because we've gone from 10 years ago, Justin Krause's role, who was the DFO, the Director of Football Operations. Like, now that role has begotten a GM, which now will beget a president, and it's not like those other two jobs go away. And I also think you're going to have a Billy Bean person. You're going to have a board, a guy that you got to have a numbers guy that sits there and you know, looks at numbers, that's going to work under those two. And what we're talking about, well, we need 4 offensive linemen. We're probably going to lose these 3. We can add these 5 out of the portal. We're looking at this kid out of high school, and like, got to keep all that on a board. So college football is evolving. I know a lot of people don't like it, but guys, it's going where it's going. And as my buddy Marky B used to say, either get with it or get hit with it. And that's kind of think where we are. So, all right. So I don't know when we'll be back. We will be back the week before the bowl game. So stick to our socials.
Couple of weeks for sure.
Yeah, we'll be back.
What I'll try to do is, I'll try to line up maybe something of, because I know we love doing our, why we coach. That's really for the summertime, but maybe try to find a player or two. Where are they now? Try to find some Tigers of the past and see what they're doing and get their perspective on the Tigers season, and the way things are going in college football. So I think that'd be something fun to do.
Yeah, I think it'd be awesome. So until next time, for the best co-host in all the land, Larry Marley and Brian Moss, John Maddox signing off, saying we will see you when we see you. Thanks for listening.